Video. Anekantavad once again. I think we're going to play this one. So he did ask me a question in the comments. I just figure I'll try to deal with, but yeah. Gary, can I ask you a serious question? Where is the future right now? What is it? What is this future thing? I don't mean an abstraction or a mental construct to assist our understanding. I mean, what is it per se? It's as this moment is, and it's events, a string of events, and it's a string of events that haven't gotten here yet, because the quake, the rumble, the ball, the snowball hasn't rolled there yet. Snowball is here, and it's got trees sticking out of it and all kinds of crap from where it's been, and it's going to collect some stuff while it's here, and then it's going to be a different snowball in the future, and that's sort of what I'm talking about. And the character, though, of that snowball is going to depend on whether, when it hits here, it hits a rock, or it hits snow, or it hits trees, or we're going to form the snowball, in a sense, by lying on our left side or lying on our right side, flipping a coin, doing some sort of action. Now, the action gets to the word choice, which, as we all know, is this difficult subject about the nature of using a word like choice when we don't really do any choicing. We just do filtering. We do a determination. We could argue there's a scale, but we rig the scale with our disposition. So I could say something that's just obvious. I could say something like, the evidence that O.J. Simpson is guilty is overwhelming evidence. But there's people who have scales, the pivot point has been perverted on the teeter-totter to some preposterous position. And there's just no way, it doesn't matter how much evidence you pile up, because they've so broken the scale with a bigotry, a prejudice, a resistance. I will not believe it. And so it can't be believed. It can't have the normal effect, which is the evidence would have an effect. The trees stick out of the snowball as it's coming at us. We can see the trees. And because somebody doesn't want to deal with the trees, they squint their eyes and make them into fuzzy bunnies instead. And now they don't have to make the reaction that would have been our reaction. Now our reaction changes because it's not, it's not a monster coming, it's fuzzy bunnies. It's this kind of thing. So yes, all this is inevitable. All this is all going to happen the way it's going to happen. My argument is that what we see in the nature of the human organism through 10,000 years of progress is that many good things, good rational notions, catch on. You learn how to wash your hands before you deliver babies, or you learn how to do certain things because the outcome is so much better when you do it this logical, sensible, rational way. And you figure out how to engineer your sewage pipes and your water lines and everything else so they don't break all the time, and you don't have walls ruined, and your house doesn't fall down, and blah blah blah. So you learn how to do this thing called life in this ordered and sensible way, and you have these sensible rules. So my argument to you, in the sense of what is this choice thing, generally speaking, the choice is, are we going to do what we know intelligently is the right thing to do, or are we going to do that thing where we just say, I'm not going to let that balance. I'm going to cheat it somehow because it's in my self-interest to cheat it. Just like the politician working for the people when he's really just working for himself. That was a choice to rig the choice, if you get what I'm saying. And that decision was made by his bad character, and the fact that he had no knowledge or understanding or appreciation that more of what was at stake. That, and that these are all philosophical kind of things, right? I mean, I could never be a slave owner because I know better. Because I would know the harm I'm causing. I would know, I would be able to taste the brutality. It would be in my mouth all the time. A sense of puke in my mouth all the time. So I couldn't do it. Yes, it's determinism. It's determined that way because I have knowledge. So what I'm saying is knowledge makes choices, generally speaking. Generally speaking, for people who have any respect for knowledge. And the only people it doesn't work on are people who don't have respect for knowledge and the power of knowledge, the power of understanding systems and engineering them rationally, not irrationally. I think that's good enough.
It's almost impossible to make any kind of...
Yeah, I'm doubling his video effects by putting in a video. I smeared some magic marker on the lens just because I love I like the old days when I used to do videos with a little bit of effect, and I sort of missed that a little bit. And so I like that sometimes Anekantavad videos, probably accidentally, but whatever, come out kind of funny visually because he does them in low light or does this or does that, and they just have an interesting effect. So I'm making a mess out of his interesting effect with my interesting effect.
Descriptive statement without inferring or without bearing into that the assumption that we have the faculty of choice.
Yes, and so again, I would say we don't. Choice is a funky word. You have to use a more technical description for the processing of the snowball, the physical fact that the snowball changes through the processing of our clock spin. The friction wears the tire down. There's things that will happen, and there are things that will happen in coincidence with each other, and they will create some new happening, and blah 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 blah. But there is this capacity for variation in output dependent on the circumstance. Now the circumstance is rigid, but we can't see that it's rigid. And what we can also see, though, is that evidence leads to sensible conclusions. No evidence leads to nonsensical conclusions. That we can understand.
It doesn't mean that our choices are not determined, but it does mean that we have the faculty of choice. If you're saying that you should do this, or it would be better if you did this, or this is a good idea.
Right, so you're just describing the snowball. You're describing where it is now, that it's heading right for us, so to speak, and that it will go someplace because of us. And you're just describing the different possibilities depending on, we have the ability to merely make this decision. Eat a bag of potato chips, eat a hamburger. We have a decision, we can make a decision. It hasn't happened yet. Our brain is going to process the balance. It's going to weigh the scales, and we can do that honestly, or we can do that dishonestly. And I guess that would be my argument, that the choice really just comes down to an honest processing of what is, what we will do, and what will happen, or we can dishonestly process those equations. We can dishonestly imagine that I can lower my taxes and increase spending, and that'll work. I can dishonestly say, open the borders. I can dishonestly, just no negative effect possible. I could dishonestly say lots of stupid things that are impossible to draw on a rational map of engineering, a blueprint, and it can't happen that way. I can't make a 100-story building out of toothpicks.
Inherent in that is the idea that, I guess what the Greeks would call prohyresis, that faculty of choice exists. And I don't think you can get around that, as long as you're making a prescriptive statement. Now,
Well, again, but I will argue, again, like the determinism will determine, but all that's really being determined, I would argue that the choice is obvious in most cases if you have it on a scale, and really what we're talking about is the previous decision to rig the scale.
Is love and hate a choice? I'm not saying is it a free choice or not, but is it a choice?
I would say it doesn't matter. If you want to ask me, is bigotry a choice? I'd say all of these things you can know thyself. This is kind of terminology you like. You can know thyself. You can know thyself better than you can know anything almost. And you can know whether or not you can see it if you fairly do what logic says, which means you have to actually look at it. So if you're willing to actually look in the mirror, and look at yourself, you'll see if you're a bigot. You'll see if you're cheating. If your expectations have nothing to do with what you've set up. Like, for example, in America, you treat people like garbage for hundreds of years, give them no culture, then you throw them into the to be feral, and then they come back at you as animals, and you say, how did that happen? Duh. That's being an asshole. Yeah, to not be able to understand how that happened is being an asshole. I could argue on inheritance. I mean, I could just say, for you to think where you love your sports, you love your sports hero, you love the work they do to earn it, and then you sit there and embrace something like Donald Trump's sons deserve respect because they're great men. Huh? Donald Trump deserves respect because he's earned it, because he's done great things. Like what? Yeah, then you can see you're an asshole.
Do we have the option?
I mean, I don't mean this about him. I don't think I don't know if he would be a great supporter of the king's children. I'd be all impressed. Oh, their, non-suit of clothes is just as impressive as their father's.
Liking or lumping things. Is that an either-or thing? Is our pro-high racist involved in any way at all in that way?
Well, again, so you're using terminology, love and hate. These are emotions, and this is all kind of mush-mush. And so what I would argue is this: the first step of being an enlightened human being would be to recognize that that you are an animal and an intellect, and that's what your brain is riding on the monkey. The monkey's got the brain in a basket. It has no respect for it innately. And the brain has to sort of demand some respect from the monkey and kind of make the monkey know that, no, I'm really in control. And yes, we'll play a game, almost like a man and a woman. I'll give you some stuff, you give me some stuff. Okay, they have to make a partnership out of this somehow. But it's not going to work if you are a monkey carrying a brain. That's not going to work. If you're a monkey just using the brain to scheme like it's your calculator and you're going to figure out how to fuck somebody over with your brain, that's not going to work. So I guess the challenge I would argue is it's not about love and hate. It's about knowing thyself, and it's about understanding, again, I mean, there's more at stake than you. This is a bigger game. There's more pieces on the chessboard. Just a fact.
Regard. I would argue that it is. Now, in that sense, everything more or less becomes, I won't say value neutral, but I would say without inherent value, as Ligotti put it.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I don't have any use for Ligotti personally. I mean, beyond the fact that he's, draws the obvious conclusion. But I mean, I would never say that there's nothing innately impressive about the universe or anything in it. I mean, obviously I'm pretty impressed by this function. Our neurology is pretty frickin' impressive. The whole thing of being conscious is pretty impressive as just a development. And certainly the agony and the ecstasy as concepts are impressive. So, yeah, fuck that bullshit.
There's nothing of inherent value in existence.
Right, but I'm just... Our projections are nonsense. Our feelings are everything. So yes, what we experience as a sensate organism is everything. What anything that can feel, it feels, is everything. And what they're feeling about, though, may be nothing. Maybe they're feeling about other things feeling. Well, then that's a good way. I mean, that's feeling. That's putting your feeling on something that can possibly have value, because something feeling, something else's agony or ecstasy, should be associated with our feelings. That's rational to give feelings to feelings, but nothing else innately is valuable. It can only derive value by affecting something that feels. Bullets can't mean anything if something feeling doesn't get hit with one. Earthquakes can't mean anything if there aren't feeling things to be harmed by them.
But value is placed on things by that which values.
Right, and again, I would say if what you're placing value on is the value engine, the machine making value experiences, having agony and ecstasy, that's good. That's an appropriate synthesis of reality into synthetic perception. Synthetic perception matches the reality then. You're seeing something of value and feeling the value. That's rational, in my opinion.
Us, whatever usness means. And that value is not necessarily good or evil, and it's not necessarily categorical.
All right, I would argue that the intrinsic part is, that's separated from all influence and context. The agony is bad, the ecstasy is good. The absence of the agony, really. Okay, but that's a real thing. The whip is bad intrinsically, and it's only through a context that you could possibly make it a good. It's only by this little whip now takes away a bigger whip later can the whip be good.
And it's not necessarily one or the other. I would say that it's more along the lines of like it or lump it.
Whatever, I don't know what that even... sorry. Yeah, I think I'm having a much more intelligent conversation than that. So I don't know what that is. I don't even know how to process that little fart. But we have been here and done this before, so I guess I should just say that. So obviously, this Anekantavad cannot parse material reality into this element of a conscious being generating value experiences, and that what affects that conscious being generating these value experiences can have supplemental value because it creates good or bad sensations, and that's an intrinsic function.
It's more along the lines of love it or hate it.
Again, I don't think this has anything to. I'm certainly not saying that. I'll use the word hate just because it makes it easy to understand that you don't like something intensely, but clearly I would be defending an argument of finding dysfunction, and I often use these words like it's broken. I mean, I don't talk about criminals being criminals. I just talk about them being catastrophically broken and dysfunctional and insufficiently efficient, and those kind of standards. And those are what I would it'd be nice if human beings could elevate to that more complex conversation of more careful language, but clearly for the ease of the simple game we're playing of whatever wacky ball, it makes it easier for people to use this language.
Fear it or love it. Now, we live in a universe in which I would agree a great deal is determined. An enormous amount of what I experience or what is going on in this universe
or in your own head. I think he's going to say it. I think he's actually going to say it. Or in my own head. Yes, it's all manufactured by these experiences, and people can have experiences that are enlightening and qualifying, that give them capacity to play a beautiful song on a piano, or they can have experiences that make them very good at taking sledgehammers and bashing them through their neighbor's skull.
My own existence even is completely out of my hands.
My is the tricky word, right? So again, I'm going to argue when we talk about me or I or my, we're talking about these elements of this subjective, personally interested, selfish cunt of a psychology, and this extensive knowledge base who has seen the biggest ball of string and driven through redwood trees and, in your case, gone to everywhere else on the planet and seen this and done that. And that knowledge functions that knowledge runs differently than the subjective what's in it for me character. And so these are, I mean, I don't want to turn it into the little angel and the little devil, because that's not necessarily what it is. But it's one thing is qualified to make decisions. One thing is just a barbarian.
Now, I talk a lot about amor fati and love of fate, love of that which is necessary, love of that over which you have no control.
Well, again, I just what you have no control. You mean you can't understand the stupidity of your action, or you can't resist raping? I mean, what's the argument being made? That you're just too blinded by my self-interest to ever jump on the grenade, or you somehow know grenade jumping is useless, or you have proof of it somewhere. There's some evidence you can construct that says, no, I wasn't necessary. World War II would have got won without me showing up. All the soldiers could say that somehow, and still we would win World War II. Obviously that wouldn't happen. So obviously somebody had to show up, if you get my drift.
One of my favorite figures of fun, I guess, is what I haven't invented this term, but the angry white male. The guy who sits in front of his TV and just keeps changing the channel to find more things to be angry about.
Yeah, I found a safe place to go is infomercials, as funny as that sounds. I mean, they're tacky and stupid, but you can only get so mad at them.
He's angry about things he has absolutely no control over. And the very fact of his lack of control makes him angrier.
Well, So again, this is not something you really believe, in the sense that when you say he has no control, you're just saying he hasn't learned how to meditate, or he hasn't learned how to properly process his emotions and understand that emotions are a transitory thing. They just flow through you. You have an impulse. The impulse will go away. Wait 2 minutes and you'll want something different. So be careful what impulses you let control your behavior. Why invest your whole life, in something that was only going to last 3 minutes, and if you would have let it pass, you'd have a much better life, because you wouldn't be in prison.
It's like being in quicksand, and the more you struggle, the deeper you sink. Now, I find that sort of a figure of fun because, in a sense, he's his own victim, in as much as there are any real victims in this universe.
Well, let's understand about quicksand, too, is that you can understand you're in quicksand. You can understand what movements will do you good and what movements will do you bad. So, lying backwards and floating will be clever. And then it would be proper to do a little moving and float your way home.
He's engaged his faculty of choice to lump everything instead of liking it. He has the option, I would argue, of loving what he sees on the news, or perhaps not loving.
Well, again, so this is again just an argument about we have the option to break the scale. So if your scale understands the preposterously insane equation we have set up in society, where the 1% privilege own 85% of the resources and overprice them preposterously, and the masses go through huge amounts of deprivation for the amount of money the wealthy waste on jet fuel and gold-plated toilets alone. Their chairs, their thrones that they sit on. They'll spend more than what it would cost to give proper medical care to hundreds of people. These insane equations, and we are supposed to. The proper thing for us to do is to forget about the scale. Forget about the fact that this is obviously wrong, error, and instead put a little brick under there. Put a little brick of bullshit, of positive thinking, and I just don't want it mess up my life. I'm busy having fun, so I'll just stick a brick under there and pretend reality isn't screaming something. I'll just shut the fucking error code. I'll just say, no more error codes, please. I'll just turn the speakers off on the computer. I'll just go into the settings and just say, don't tell me when I'm about to blow everything up. Because I don't want to know. Because I don't care. And that's sort of what it comes down to. And that's ugly. Sorry. The thing you're selling, as I pointed out before, is the road to hell. Empowering the selfish animals, giving them excuse to rig the scales, is evil.
Loving what he sees on the news, but loving the fact that he is living in a world in which all of this stuff is happening. Love of what is necessary is not the same thing as being glad that things are the way they are and not something else. You're sort of saying, this is the way it is. This is completely out of my hands, and in this I completely agree with the hard determinists.
So again, we've jumped, again, you don't agree with the hard determinists, because again, the hard determinists would always accept the fact that human civilization has evolved, that we grow up, that we acknowledge truth and embrace it and incorporate it into our function. We're not determined to stay stupid. We are affected by the truth when it shows up. It knocks on the door, we open the door, we see it, we have to let it in the house, kind of a thing. So let's not pretend we never had the choice to open or close the door and all that kind of stuff. No, we had to make some choices, but I'm saying those choices are rather overt and rather plainly only an imbecile doesn't let the truth in. Alright, the camera battery's going dead, so maybe I'll just cut this and we'll do a part 2 at some future time and such. Half hour is a lot. Sorry about that. These videos do get a bit long. I do understand people don't have an infinite amount of time to watch Gary Entertainment Inc., but, you know, sorry. Life is complicated, and it's a little complicated to get to it, you know. So, sorry about that. Such. It's important, though. This is getting right to the heart of it, in my opinion. Minky brain. Different things. Feelings, thoughts. Different. Okay, enough said.